Breaking news now from the bottom of the planet. One of the world's largest icebergs has broken away from a tremendous ice sheet in Antarctica.
Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see and have not seen it. To hear what you hear and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
It's been hanging on by a thread for months, but finally a giant chunk of ice the size of Delaware has snapped off. At more than 2,200 square miles, the massive fracture certainly looks dramatic, but scientists are not pressing the panic button just yet. Is the fracturing of this iceberg cause for alarm?
At the moment, I would categorically say no.
Glaciologist David Vaughan says it's all part of regular housekeeping in the Antarctic, but may provide scientific clues long term.
The question is whether this is the beginning of a retreat of this ice shelf.
An ice shelf is a permanent floating sheet of ice attached to land. An iceberg will snap off every few decades, but the ice shelf usually grows again as it gains new ice from land. The warmer temperatures have seen some ice shelves retreat to such a point that they are unable to regenerate. Scientists will now be able to determine if this is one such case.
We will take sediment samples from beneath the ice shelf that will tell us how often this kind of event has occurred in the past.
Of more immediate concern, however, is that without an ice shelf to hold it back, the glacial ice behind it will flow into the sea and contribute to driving sea levels up more quickly than predicted for this century.
Tonight, drivers caught in flash floods from Ohio to New York. In Buffalo, firefighters pushing this car to dry land.
We're coming upon them and pushing them out, but we're trying to cut off everything right now.
Parts of the Midwest reeling. Half a foot of rain in just hours Wednesday north of Chicago. Floodwaters busting through a basement window, racing into this Wisconsin home. The governor declaring a state of emergency on scene today.
For something this big, it's remarkable that not only is there not a fatality, but that there hasn't been serious injury.
Across the border in Gurnee, Illinois, floodwaters rising, fish swimming in the streets. Residents racing to fill sandbags to protect their town from what could be record flooding. More than 100 homes and businesses already damaged.
Tonight, that massive sinkhole outside Tampa, Florida, growing, swallowing 2 houses and threatening more. The family in this house getting out minutes before the ground gave way.
It was so emotional. I started crying and everything. But we got the dogs out and we couldn't save anything else.
Their home sinking into the mud.
Everything's gone.
A little earlier, they were calling 911.
There's a sinkhole right next to our neighbor's house, and it's literally eating the house like completely.
Within minutes, it was crumbling. And you see how that sinkhole spread across the street, expanding to 225 feet wide and 50 feet deep. So far, 11 neighborhood families evacuated, grabbing what they could carry as the earth crumbled.
You could just see in people's eyes the anxiety level. No. They're fearful. And unfortunately, we can't give clear answers because this is Mother Nature. But to everybody in this community, know we stand with you.
The Israeli Arab terrorists murdered 2 policemen during a terror attack in Jerusalem's Old City early Friday morning. After the attack, a police unit chased the terrorists and killed them during a shootout on the Temple Mount. Officials say 3 attackers came from an Arab town in northern Israel. Israeli president weighed in on the attack, saying, "We cannot allow for agents of murder who desecrate the name of God to drag us into a bloody war." He added it's time for the Arab leadership in Israel and even outside of it to express a clear position against this criminal attack.
In Egypt, authorities are investigating 2 deadly attacks, one targeting tourists, the other police. 2 German tourists have been killed and 4 others, including 2 Czechs, were wounded in a knife attack. This occurred at a holiday resort on the Red Sea coast on Friday. The attacker was arrested immediately and the wounded tourists were taken to hospital. The attack happened hours after 5 police officers were killed in a drive-by shooting near Cairo. No organization has claimed responsibility for the shooting. Authorities fear it's the latest in a series of attacks targeting security forces.
Well, China is closely watching a recent U.S. missile test. A U.S. official has told Fox News the Chinese spy ship was only 100 miles from Kodiak, Alaska. That's where our military launched an anti-ballistic missile earlier this week. It was the first of its kind to be seen in those waters, and although spy ships from China are no stranger to the coastline, China sent 5 ships over when President Obama visited the state in 2015. The USS Arleigh Burke warship was also recently followed by a Chinese spy ship at sea.
Triggered, North Korea has declared that Washington has reached the tipping point of nuclear war after the United States and South Korea held a live-fire drill against Pyongyang. According to the Telegraph, long-range B-1B Lancer bombers reportedly flew close to the heavily fortified border between 2 Koreas and dropped 2,000-pound bombs. North Korea's Rodong propaganda newspaper warned not to play with fire on a powder keg. Of course, North Korea escalated tensions after launching an ICBM test on the 4th of July that showed significant progress in North Korea's attempt to threaten Alaska.
I must say that today is a dark day. It is a dark day because yesterday's actions by North Korea made the world a more dangerous place. Their illegal missile launch was not only dangerous, but reckless and irresponsible. It showed that North Korea does not want to be part of a peaceful world. They have cast a dark shadow of conflict on all nations that strive for peace. Yesterday's act came from the same vicious dictator who sent a young college student back home to his parents, unresponsive and in a coma. For Americans, the true nature of the North Korean regime was painfully brought home with the images of 2 guards holding Otto Warmbier up as they transported him from a prison he should never have been in. Otto Warmbier is but one person out of millions who have been killed, tortured, or deprived of their human rights by the North Korean regime.
North Korea once again launched a ballistic missile in blatant violation of the relevant Security Council resolutions. This is totally unacceptable. Japan lodged a strong protest directly against North Korea immediately after the launch and condemned the act in the strongest terms. Here, I express once again our strong condemnation of this utterly unacceptable provocation. Japan demands that North Korea immediately cease all ballistic missile and nuclear development programs and provocations. Japan will never accept a nuclear-armed North Korea.
Although missile defense systems in Alaska have been deployed, the U.S. Missile Defense Agency will undergo testing of those anti-ballistic missile systems.
The test was conducted on the 30th of May out in the Pacific. Here's a blue water chart that depicts the test construct. The ground-based interceptor was fired from Vandenberg Air Force Base. It was tracked by a Tippy-2 on Wake Island and the SBX in the Northwest Pacific, giving the interceptor solution to Vandenberg to intercept a target launched from the Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands. The red indicates the target flyout, and the green indicates the GBI from Vandenberg.
Reuters reported that the United States plans on carrying out new tests on its THAAD missile defense system in Alaska, this according to 2 U.S. officials. No one except the military-industrial complex wants yet another war in a foreign land ultimately paid for by the blood and sweat of American lives. After decades of failed attempts to decapitate the head of one of the most brutal regimes in history, the potential for a strike by U.S. and South Korea special forces has ratcheted up as reports of Kim Jong-un's appearances have decreased, and South Korean Assembly member Lee Kol-woo reports Kim is so engrossed with collecting information about the decapitation operation, so engrossed that he is reportedly moving only at dawn.